today have various businesses in Australia, Dubai, UK and the Balkans. How did you become an entrepreneur and what set the process in motion?
I've always been fascinated with the movement of goods and services around the world. I remember as far back as being in high school, watching trucks carrying containers, boxes that came in from overseas, wondering what was in those boxes and how did they get here. And likewise, you would read about Australian products being exported, and that fascinated me. I thought, well, there's something really interesting in this, you know, things coming from the other side of the world and arriving on your table as foodstuffs or building materials to build homes with, etc., that came from Europe or the United States, cars that arrived from Germany, and all of that kind of movement of goods and services really interested me. So that was my first, awakening, if you like.
Yeah. When it was?
Oh, when I was in high school, I must have been about 14 or 15 years old when I started to notice these things and became interested.
What was your first business?
I was determined to do a number of things. I was determined to make the whole world my backyard, to trade internationally, and I badly needed a sports car. So they were my motivations to become successful.
One of your companies, Aviation, is a key player in the global market for educating pilots. How did you find this market niche?
Yeah, well, I have a background in all kinds of businesses. One of those businesses that I dedicated considerable time to was in digital media, creative media. I was fortunate enough to be able to help build a very large digital media business, which we sold back in 2011. And having understood or having an understanding of the international education market, and then coupling that with some aviation experience, because I'm a helicopter pilot. I learned to fly helicopters many years ago. I've had exposure to aviation since I was in my early to mid-teens. And so it was coupling those two things together. I saw an opportunity in aviation to really go to the next level, identifying an international brand and really taking the education from vocational to a higher education type standard.
Okay. What helped you to develop this company into the increasingly high player in the market?
Well, we're a relatively new player in the market in terms of aviation education. We have a pilot training business, and we launched this business strategically. And most businesses are grown organically, but this one I was very, very specific in terms of what I wanted to accomplish and what kind of time frame, etc. And so I launched this aviation business in a way and in a model and a structure that would see it develop very, very rapidly. So it was originally forming a strategic international brand, one that would be accepted by the international marketplace, and through acquisitions, building the business to a point, and then growing it from that particular point.
Okay. So you started from Australia, right?
Yeah, the first acquisitions I made were in Australia, and then we moved abroad to make some further acquisitions.
What personal principles do you bring to a business?
Oh, I think nothing succeeds without being tenacious, consistent, persistent, and really sort of following your vision. And for me, I like to kind of follow my passion, things that I'm passionate about. I don't really work on anything that I don't have a feeling for. So I have a sense, a feeling, a liking, a specific passion, and all of these things that I do, I actually have a passion for. And on that basis, it's easy to pursue and easy to keep interested long term.
Nowadays, many companies say that they have a mission. What mission does Rihanna Group have?
Well, my mission is that, fortunately, I'm in a position where I really don't need anything. I've been able to accomplish, pretty much all of the creature comforts that people need, and I've always liked to strike a balance with things in my life. I often say to my friends, how much lobster can you eat? Because in the end, we only need so much. If you look at us, philosophically speaking, we only occupy a square foot of real estate in the world at any given time until you're dead, and then you occupy about 6 square feet of real estate as you go into the ground and then disappear. But so for me, it's about balance and knowing when enough is enough. So philosophically speaking, I believe that you have to plow back. You struggle and you toil to get to a certain point in your business career, in your career, and then at a certain point, you really kind of have enough. You can provide for yourself, provide for your family, do those things that you need to do, support yourself, and then it's about giving back to the world. If you can, you do that progressively, even in a small way as you go. But at a certain point, I think we mature to a certain level of success, and if you have that success and you have that comfort, then I think with that also comes a responsibility to give something back.
Montenegro is quite a small country in comparison to other locations where you own businesses. Why are you investing here?
Yeah, now I look at the world kind of, on a macro and a micro level. And I've been watching the progress of Montenegro for some years. I came here many, many years ago as a teenager, as I was backpacking and driving, traveling around Europe. And I was immediately attracted to the area all those years ago. But as the former Yugoslavia, which it was in those days, there was nothing that a foreigner, a young kid from Australia could actually do here. But I've been watching the progress of the country over the years and kind of waiting for the right time to move. We sit here in Montenegro in the middle of kind of 500 million of the world's wealthiest people. The people that live within a 1,000-mile radius of here have the highest standard of living in the world. And what I mean by that is that you can turn a tap on and get relatively clean or totally clean water. You have flushable toilets. You have healthcare within reasonable reach, emergency services within reasonable reach, social security type arrangements, within reasonable access to most people. If you look across the world, most people in the world don't have these fundamental basics. So, here we are in an emerging country, an emerging economy that is, kind of beckoning. It's a region that's on the up and up. It sits in the middle of Europe. Everyone is working towards the same kind of European standards. They're clearly mapped out, whether it be building roads or healthcare or education systems. So this is a region that has a lot of room to grow. It's a small country, nestled between a number of other quite significant countries. It's kind of, you can be a big fish in a small pond in a place like this. It's easy to maneuver into and do things. There are challenges, of course, but generally on balance, it's quite an easy place to do business, to establish oneself and to do business. And it's those and many other things, apart, as well as the natural beauty and the willingness and the openness of the country to attract foreign investors like myself that became attractive to me.
Let's speak a little bit more about entrepreneurship now. Ferdinand Porsche said that if one doesn't fail at times, he hasn't challenged himself. Do you think that business people shall learn from their own mistakes or from other people's mistakes?
It's a combination of everything, Sergey. Firstly, you get knocked down, you get up again. You don't stay down.
That
you
is
just get up.
Belief.
You've got to be persistent and you have to be consistent in your belief. You know, if you really believe it, you need to be persistent and consistent with it. And so it's, you know, that tenaciousness that gets ahead. You know, they say the world is full of educated derelicts, yeah, and a lot of educated people that, you know, aren't that successful, and, you know, for varying reasons. I think a big part of that reason is not lack of intelligence or desire, but lack of that determination, you know, to get knocked down and get up again, and to get knocked down. It's kind of the boxer's, you know, adage. You know, you don't just lay on the floor, want the first punch you take. You know, you're going to get a lot of punches in the rounds of a boxing match. But in terms of learning from your own mistakes, of course you've got to learn from your own mistakes. You've got to take stock of what you got wrong. I mean, that's how you progress. Yeah, and also recognize that, you know, is that mistake as a result of something you did, a miscalculation or an error on your part? Is it something externally, or is it a combination of both? You know, Confucius, the ancient Chinese philosopher, said the first step to solving a problem is to first admit you have one. A lot of people don't even admit that they have a problem, and so they'll never go very far in terms of fixing that problem. So yeah, it's a combination of that. But, you know, also, you know, I remember, you know, my father used to say to me, you know, at an early age, you know, learn from other people's mistakes. Don't burn your hand on the fire. Watch other people. If you see them making a mistake, especially if they get hurt, don't make that same mistake. You don't need to experience having your hand burnt on a fire to know that it's not good for you. You've seen someone else do it. You've seen the consequences. Learn from that. So it's a combination of things, really.
It is common for business people to have a mentor that helps them to achieve their goals. Do you see any downsides in that for young entrepreneurs?
No, I think it's absolutely essential to have a mentor. I certainly had a mentor. My mentor, who's you know, a long time passed away now, is a fellow by the name of Kevin Kirby, who was one of Australia's most renowned industrialists. And he was, you know, a wonderful man, but, you know, very, very disciplined. A nice man, but very, very disciplined, and taught me many, many things. One of them, you know, listening and keeping my ears and eyes open as opposed to talking. He always used to say, you know, when you talk, you're only repeating something you've already heard, but if you listen, you might learn something new. So shut up and listen.
That's true. Which one of the well-known entrepreneurs nowadays you can name that you admire?
I think there's a number of people that, you know, I mean, I think Steve Jobs was brilliant. People won't call him an entrepreneur, but he really was, who, you know, had this vision, technical vision that he saw through. He utilized other people to do the technical work, but he had the vision and the ideas. You know, there are many, you know, Ma, Branson. I mean, these are all wonderful entrepreneurs, wonderful visionaries, and have that ability to look outside of the square and really see and smell opportunity.
Yeah.
I think it is about balance. Balance is actually the key word here, because at every juncture you need to kind of take stock of where you are. It's very easy to lose yourself. And, you know, using an aviation sort of aviation terminology, or working, you know, working through it in that kind of way to consider things. You know, you've got to understand where you sit in time and space. You know, you're sitting in the three-dimensional world up there, and, you know, measuring where you are, how fast you're going, how high off the ground you are.
Yeah.
You know, situational awareness, what's happening around you, are all important things. And as part of that is, you know, you're trying to work out how you sit. What's your state of mind like? Are you physically or mentally exhausted? Are you able to carry the level of burden that you're carrying without sort of damaging yourself? And of course, there are times where you lose focus and you're chasing a project or a particular business interest, and so you're going for it hard and you don't really think too much about yourself until one day you find yourself just collapsing in exhaustion in a hotel room thinking, I can't do this anymore. It's just, I'm exhausted. So it is about balance and taking stock as you go of where you sit in time and space and how it's impacting or impinging on your physical and mental self. So for me, I've always been pretty good at, striking that work-life balance and having those experiences and little mini breaks as I go along. It isn't just all about, work, although a lot of the time, especially in the beginning, it had to be. But finding that balance and taking that time off and being conscious of where you sit, what your mental and your physical health is actually like. Are you deeply exhausted, or you're able to cope with it and keep going?
There are 70 goals that United Nations has to transform the world by 2030, and you're the founding member of the Global Sustainability Network, which pursued the goal number 8 from this list, which aims to promote sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. What is it all about, and what is your personal mission in this?
That comes back to one of the first questions you asked, and that is plowing something back. The United Nations, all of the countries in the world, have endorsed the 17 Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. And in each of these goals, there are crossovers and complementary elements, but they are all working towards making the world a better place. Goal 8 specifically has a number of subcategories that focus on 8.7, for example, which is one that a lot of people are interested in, around human trafficking and modern-day slavery, and the abuse of children, as workers in factories, or even sex workers, sex slaves. It's estimated in places like India, 6 million kids are sold into sex slavery every year. So this is totally unacceptable. And the feeling is that any one of us that has the resources or the means or can make time should apply themselves to one of these 17 categories of sustainable goals and help solve the problem. So in conjunction with some close associates and friends, I became one of the founding members of the Global Sustainability Network, which was founded a few years ago, back in 2014. There was a joint declaration signed by the Pope and many faith leaders pursuing in particular goal 8.7. And we took on this challenge to pull together a group of people from around the world, various leaders from media, from government, from business, from education, and the like, to see how we could pool our spectrum of influence and resources to helping accomplish these goals and diminish this burden, this scourge of things like modern-day slavery, although there are many other categories.
You have invested in musical projects, so you have recording studio back in Australia, and you also had Fame Music. What role does music play in your life?
I've divested from all of my music business industries, but I became involved in the music area, if you like, and music and film type production due to, well, actually it started beforehand, but became more involved due to my role with the SAE Institute, this business that I was involved with some years ago. And music has played an important role in my life. And it plays an important role in many people's lives. But I think it's not something that you want to get totally self-absorbed with. You know, most people looking to make a career out of music, who've attempted to make a career out of music, will find it's a very hard road, and the same as the film industry. So I kind of think it's something that sort of kind of exists or should exist on the periphery. It becomes one of those 100% of things that you do or that make up your life. I kind of think for most people, music should make up, you know, a couple of percent, maybe 5%, maybe 10% if they're really good of their life, and they should focus on a whole bunch of other things, their health, their education in other areas, their sustainability, you know, supporting their families, you know, etc. Home, food on the table, shelter, you know, all that kind of stuff. But I think what happens is people kind of find it as an easy vocation to lose themselves in and kind of make excuses for themselves, you know, so I'm a musician, I'm pursuing my musical talents and that's what I want to be. Sure, you may be very, very talented, but the world is full of very, very talented people.
That's true.
Just go to Hollywood or go to London. The streets are awash with talented people that really don't see the full benefit of the commercial talent that we see some get. You know, I think it's important to keep in perspective that very, very, very few as a percentage succeed at the very top level. And so that's fine. It's a fantastic thing, a fantastic hobby. You know, I play the banjo, for God's sake, and it's sort of a very mediocre guitarist. And, you know, I love music. I play music everywhere, in my flat, my home, the car, and whatever I'm doing. But again, it's about perspective and about, you know, work-life balance. I think everyone needs to work out what music actually means. So I became involved in these recording studios. It was a strategic acquisition that I'd made, Studios 301, which was in Australia. We had 2 studios in Australia, one in Cologne in Germany and one in Stockholm in Sweden. In fact, the old ABBA studios became our 301 studios. And then I was also the founder of Fame Music, which was an online portal to support emerging artists, which still exists and still operating. But I divested myself of those interests, you know, a couple of years ago now, and have focused on the aviation and real estate and other sectors, other investment sectors.
Do you prefer books or podcasts?
I prefer, you know, I used to read copious amounts of material, and I still read a lot of, unfortunately, the more sort of business-oriented papers and publications and the like. But I prefer podcasts for the ease. You know, I'm addicted to YouTube. I love YouTube, and I watch all manner of things. Watching the TED Talks is one of my favorite things on YouTube. There's a lot of inspirational people out there that you can learn from. But with podcasts and the like, you know, I like the idea of, you know, being able to put something on in the car during that downtime of driving or traveling, etc., and just educating myself.
Can you suggest maybe 3 books or 3 podcasts or 3 YouTube channels to young entrepreneurs to follow with?
Yeah, it might surprise you that the things that I would recommend don't directly relate to business. They are more about self-improvement, positioning one's self in terms of the world, in terms of how they should view the world. Eckhart Tolle has a book called The Power of Now that you know, had a big impact on me. You know, when I first read it and first heard it, I'd heard it on a podcast as well. In the very, very early days, I think it was Norman Vincent Peale, who was a reverend in New York, in the United States, and he wrote a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. And, you know, I read that many, many years ago, and it had a really big impact on me because I believe in positive visualization. I believe in visualizing, you know, the outcome and, you know, keeping the expectations realistic and then moving towards that outcome. And so that was another book, you know, from memory that, you know, played an important role in terms of starting to twig my thinking, if you like.
Are there any philosophies that you live by?
There are a number of things that I live by. I guess if you're looking at it in terms of priorities, one is you don't let the behaviour of others have an effect on your inner peace. You don't let other people make their problems your problem. And I think also that you've got to recognise that if you're on the wrong train, every station you come to is the wrong station, and know when to get off the train and board the right train in life. But then also it's important to consistently plough something back as you go. This is not just about taking, it's about giving.
Okay, I see. In one word, what does your life as an entrepreneur look like?
In one word?
Yeah.
I think it's hard to define in one word, but I think philosophically, I try and seek peace in everything that I do. So I need to be peaceful with it.
Okay.
I need to be peaceful with the people, the situation. I need to be at peace.
Okay. 3 questions. What quality do you value the most in people and in employees? And is it the same quality?
Work ethic. Believing in the principles of fair and equitable behaviour. Taking a moral stance in terms of the way that you conduct yourself with your business. I don't believe in micromanaging employees. I believe that everyone should have it within them to do the right thing. If they're being engaged for a task or a purpose, then I believe without being watched, they will fulfill those responsibilities without being watched. So there's got to be some honour, if you like, in that process.
When last did you do something which you never done before?
Last did something I've never done before.
Yeah.
Hard to say because I'm doing lots of different things.
That's the question.
Yeah. I hadn't been diving for a long time. I went diving in Sardinia about a week ago, which was really nice. I hadn't dived since I was in Thailand about 5 years earlier, I think. So that was something really very, very nice.
And the last question, what is your motto?
My motto?
Yeah.
I think that it's not one thing, it's many things. It's kind of a lot of the things that we talked about. There are 2 pieces of literature that kind of sum up the way that I view the world. One is a piece called the Disederata, and the other one is a piece called If. So if you have time, look them up.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you.